Andor Season 2 is right around the corner. To prepare, here's everything you need to know, including the new structure for the series, Star Wars events we can expect to see, and more. I do want to point out that when this video comes out, I will be in Japan getting ready for Star Wars Celebration. So it's very possible some stuff in here might be outdated if they drop new trailers or TV spots or something, so forgive me if that's the case. But let's dive in and start by running through a very quick and basic refresher on Season 1. Cassian Andor used to be a child named Cassa from the planet Kenari until a series of events surrounding a Republic shipwreck resulted in him being adopted by scavengers named Marva and Clem Andor. They took him and raised him on their homeworld Ferrix, but unfortunately that meant his sister was left behind. When the Empire rose to power, they hanged Clem for a misunderstanding. Cassian fought back and was sent to jail and then to war on Mimban until he escaped. After returning to Ferrix, he developed a bad reputation as a general lowlife who owed everyone money. The present-day events of the story pick up as he continues his search for his long-lost sister and winds up killing 2 security officers from the Preox Morlana Corporation. Cassian attempts to cover his tracks, but an annoyingly persistent inspector named Cyril Karn hunts him down. A mysterious rebel agent named Luthen Rail rescues Cassian, humiliating Karn in the process. Luthen hires Andor as a mercenary to assist in a heist against the Empire. The rest of the team are believers, especially a young man named Nimic who is writing a manifesto. He and many others die during the robbery, but the crew successfully steals over 80 million credits from the Empire. Cassian walks away with his cut and Nimic's manifesto and attempts to lay low. The Imperial Security Bureau cracks down on all types of crime in the wake of the heist, and an agent named Dedra Miro investigates Cassian, hoping he will lead to a much larger target she calls Axis. Axis is actually Luthen, and he operates an antiquities shop as a front for his dealings with Senator Mon Mothma, various rebel cells, and Lonnie Young, his spy within the ISB. He begins to worry that Cassian is a loose end that needs to be killed. Cyril Karn also becomes obsessed with Andor and starts his own investigation despite being fired from his job as a deputy inspector. But nobody can find him because he gets himself arrested under a false name for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. His heist has led to an increase in prison sentencing, so he is sent away to Narkina 5, where he and others like him are forced to build the same piece of machinery over and over again. When they realize they'll be held there forever, even after their sentences run out, Cassian helps lead a revolt and many prisoners escape, at least the ones that can swim. On Coruscant, Mon Mothma struggles to balance her life between being a senator, a mother and wife, and a secret rebel. She enlists a friend to help her launder credits, but becomes increasingly desperate and has to ally herself with a shady character named Davos Skolden. In exchange, he demands his son and her daughter meet and possibly get married, and Mothma sadly agrees. After escaping prison, Cassian learns that his mother has passed away. He heads home to Ferrix for the funeral, where the Imperial Security Bureau, Luthen, and Cyril are all hoping to capture or kill him. Marva's posthumous speech to her neighbors causes a riot. In the chaos, Dedra is almost killed until she is saved by Cyril, and they have a weird moment in a storage room. Cassian rescues his friend, Bix, who was imprisoned and tortured by Miro, and then seeks out Luthen, asking to become a part of the larger fight against the Empire. So that's Season 1, which all took place 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. Season 2 is going to be a little different. It'll cover 4 more years' time, catching us all the way up to the events of Rogue One. Similar to Season 1, every 3 episodes will cover a distinct arc, and each arc will take place in a different year. So the first 3 episodes will take place around 4 years before the Battle of Yavin, and then there will be a time jump and another set of 3 episodes, and so on. Showrunner Tony Gilroy has already said the series ends with Cassian preparing to head to the Ring of Kafrene to meet Tivik. So when this is all over, you can basically watch all of Andor, which will lead directly into Rogue One, which leads directly into A New Hope, which is fun. What's more is this season will be released over the course of 4 weeks. Every arc will be released in its entirety, so episodes 1 through 3 come out on April 22nd, episodes 4 through 6 on April 29th, episodes 7 through 9 on May 6th, and the final 3 episodes on May 13th. So what can we expect to happen over the course of this season? From the larger Star Wars history, there's a pretty big event we'll see surrounding Mon Mothma. In Season 1, she mentioned the Gormans on a few occasions, talking about their shipping lanes being cut off, which would lead to their starvation, and she attempted to introduce a bill to the Imperial Senate when she was interrupted by news of the Aldhani heist. The Gorman Massacre is an event from Star Wars history that is directly connected to Mothma. It takes place in the year 2 BBY and results in Mon giving a speech publicly denouncing Palpatine, which of course makes her an enemy of the state. She goes on the run, is picked up by the crew of the Ghost in Star Wars Rebels, and delivers a call to action over the planet Dantooine, rallying several individual Rebel cells into a unified Rebel alliance. It's been confirmed that we will see the Gorman Massacre and the events that lead up to Mothma's flight from Coruscant, and Cassian looks like he will be present for it. I have a theory he might even be there to help incite the massacre. That would be dark, but feels very much like something Luthen would do. I would also love it if Cassian turns out to be the person to get Mothma off of Coruscant. That would be a lot of fast travel for him, but I think it's possible. The trailer showed us a handful of shots on a planet covered in what appeared to be wheat fields. I can't say for sure, but it reminds me of Dantooine, and of course we know the Rebellion had a base there. Rogue One was initially going to include a sequence showing the evacuation of that base, but it was cut. Some concept art for Dantooine is out there, and it does kind of match that planet, so maybe they'll adapt that story for the series. It also seems to be connected to the TIE Fighter variant Cassian appears to be stealing. It looks like that might be a TIE Avenger, a ship first created for the TIE Fighter video game. A Black Series action figure of Cassian in his Scianar test pilot disguise has been revealed. Scianar Fleet Systems was the company responsible for manufacturing the TIE line. I will point out that they had a factory on the planet Lothal, and those wheat fields also kind of look like what we saw in Star Wars Rebels and Ahsoka, so maybe that's Lothal? I personally don't think Andor will bump up against Star Wars Rebels that closely, but who knows? I should also point out that at the end of Season 1, Cassian tells his friends to hide out on Ganji Moon, so maybe that's exactly where they are in those scenes. We also have to assume that we'll get a story about Cassian meeting K2SO. At least I hope that doesn't happen off-screen during one of the time jumps. I think that would feel strange if the droid just appeared in the series all of a sudden. I will say that story has been told before in a one-shot comic that was released shortly after Rogue One. It was called Cassian and K2SO, and it was all about how Andor reprogrammed the droid during a mission on the planet Wakeko. I am fully expecting that comic to be retconned. I know that'll probably cause a stir in some circles of the fandom, but in my opinion, the comic was underwhelming, and I would much rather see a fully developed episode or even arc all about their first meeting. But my hope is that they find a way to honor that comic in some way. They did something similar in Season 1, changing Cassian's homeworld to Kenari when reference books said he was from Fest. So they had Marva mention that Fest was a cover story. It's still a retcon, but it's a retcon with a wink and a nod to the fans who care about those details. At any rate, I'm crossing my fingers Cassian and K2 meet in the first or second arc of the season, so we get plenty of time to let their partnership develop, which will of course make K2's sacrifice all the more sad in Rogue One. I'm guessing one of the arcs will be centered around Saw Gerrera. We know he's seen as a militant problem by most of the Rebel Alliance, so a story centered around why makes sense. What's more is that the trailers show Saw to be in decent health, at least physically, probably not so much mentally. But in Rogue One, he is missing both of his legs, so I could see Saw pulling off some radical mission that results in a lot of death and some serious injury for him. I don't have many more specifics from the Star Wars timeline to discuss, but we can talk about what little we know from Rogue One. Cassian goes on the mission to Scarif with Jyn because he says he has done terrible things and he needs them to matter. He can't have done them all for nothing. So I expect we will see him do some terrible things in the name of the rebellion throughout Season 2. Things that'll take a toll on him up until he can't bear it anymore and decides not to pull the trigger when his blaster is aimed at Galen Erso. Also, as a side note, I really hope Tivik is in Season 2. We can see Cassian does not feel good about shooting the man in the back in Rogue One, but showing their prior relationship in the series will make that moment hit even harder. I have some headcanon that we'll actually see why Tivik's arm is injured, which is the reason Cassian feels he has to shoot him. I also think Season 2 will differ from Season 1 because it will simply have to become more connected with the larger Star Wars universe. The first season felt very much on its own, introducing new planets and new characters, but as Cassian and Mon's stories start to intersect, and as we get closer to Yavin, we're going to see more and more familiar faces pop up, besides the obvious ones like K2SO. We know from the trailers that Melshi will be back. I'm hopeful to see more from Generals Draven and Merrick. I'm not expecting to have Harrison Dula make an appearance, although maybe Chopper will roll by like he did in Rogue One, or maybe the Ghost will be parked outside. I think anyone we saw in Rogue One is more likely, and the biggest characters I want to address are Orson Krennic and Bail Organa. Starting with Bale, after reading The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed, I'm really excited to see how his relationship with Mothma might develop. That book surprised me because I'm so used to seeing them as allies, but they do not get along in that story. They're on the same political side, but they disagree with how to go about things. I'm curious to see if that book is foreshadowing how they might be in Andor. Maybe we will see them find more and more common ground over the course of these 4 years. I'll be shocked if Bale isn't in this season. To me, it's just a question of when and how often he will appear. And by the way, The Mask of Fear is an excellent read if you're excited for Andor's return. It is heavily political and tense the same way the series is. It was marketed as a novel written for fans of Andor, and that is accurate. So if you want something to do while you wait, I would highly recommend it. But moving on to Orson Krennic, I'm not even remotely surprised to see him in this season, but that doesn't mean I'm not pumped. He was a fantastic villain in Rogue One, so getting to spend more time with him makes sense. Another potential book to read that gives you more of his character is Catalyst by James Luceno. It also fits that political thriller genre and shows how much of a social climber Krennic is. He doesn't really care about the Republic or the Empire, he just wants to be part of high society. He wants respect, and yet he does nothing to earn it. He stands on Galen Erso's shoulders and then claims the Death Star was his accomplishment. I love to hate him. I also like to think he'll be around for all 4 arcs of the season. Maybe we'll see components of the Death Star's super laser being installed once every year, culminating in the final installation in Rogue One as kind of like a ticking clock for the rebellion. With Krennic popping up, I think there will also be chances for Galen Erso or Grand Moff Tarkin to appear as well, but I'm expecting them a little less. At least I don't think they'll have major parts if they're in the show at all. The season already has a lot to do in only 12 episodes, and I haven't even mentioned characters like Brasso or the sweetest little droid B2 Emo. We don't know much about what Cyril or Dedra or even Luthen will be getting up to this season, and there are potential dangling storylines like Cassian's missing sister that may or may not be addressed. There is still a lot of unknowns for the remaining story. So I think that's all I have to say about the coming season, but I do have some more recommendations of things to watch and read if you're wanting to keep yourself busy with Andor-adjacent content. I already mentioned Catalyst and The Mask of Fear to read, but Rebel Rising gives you a solid look at Jyn Erso and Saw Gerrera. Most of Saw's story takes place before Andor, but it still gets into his brutality. If you want more Saw, he pops up in the Clone Wars, The Bad Batch, and Star Wars Rebels. Watch the Onderon arc of the Clone Wars in Season 5 to get his introduction. Watch the series premiere of The Bad Batch and the second to last episode of Season 2 if you want to be really mad at him and see how his actions hurt good people. And then watch Season 3 episodes 12 and 13 of Star Wars Rebels, as well as Season 4 episodes 3 and 4 to see more of what he gets up to during Andor. Those Season 4 episodes especially have some great exchanges between him and Mothma. Speaking of Mon, watch Star Wars Rebels Season 3 Episode 18 to see her becoming the leader of the Rebel Alliance, assembling the various cells above Dantooine. But that's all I have to say about Andor Season 2. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Andor coverage, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page for video reactions of every episode. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.